Thanks for coming, everybody. Kim, Taron, thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
The floor is yours. Don't feel obligated to have to use all 2 hours, but if you do, thank you.
All right. Well, I really didn't come with a lot planned. I really more came with an open mind. I wanted to know what the residents of Mineral County up in DeBorgia are thinking, what their thoughts are, what your concerns are. As the Justice of the Peace current and also as a candidate, there may be some concerns you have that I can help with, but there may be some concerns that I can't necessarily maybe be the front runner for help, but I'm always willing to listen, to be open to suggestions and to input. And I can tell you a little bit about me, but I really wanted to come mostly just to hear from you guys what your concerns are, what your thoughts are, what you would like to know.
Okay, the newspaper actually put the three of you that are running. What makes you different than the other two? Because with the way it was written, it sounded real similar,
I've
not
heard
different.
that from a lot of people that I personally am trying to stay out of that, so I've not read any of the other Justice of the Peace candidates. I haven't read their articles. So what I can tell you, what makes me maybe not different, because I can't really speak to what their articles were, but what makes me, or what I feel would make me the best candidate, for one, is my experience. I mean, justice has been important to me since I was 14 years old, okay? My very first job ever, I come from a large family, so I had the opportunity at 14 years old of doing some interning, and they kind of let us pick the area in the county that we wanted to work for. So it was kind of help larger families give their kids jobs, and they would pay us and give us some skills, and that's what we did in the summer. Well, my very first one at that point was working for the Justice of the Peace, and it was at that point that I realized that legal, the aspect of the legal and justice in general is very important to me. I think maybe because I come from a large family that with my siblings even, you know, you kind of have to find where that balance is, and sometimes you're a peacemaker, sometimes you've got to kind of fill those roles, and I think I started from a young age just naturally falling into that. I'm the second to the oldest of 7 kids, so I think naturally I became kind of a peacemaker. But it's that role. So the next 2 years after that, I worked for the county attorney's office for my 15th and 16th birthdays. Graduated when I was 17, and then I started working towards a degree. I was hopeful that I was going to become a paralegal or a legal assistant, but I married my husband, had children, and kind of put that stuff on the back burner for a bit. Worked in some other fields, worked for AT&T, doing credit, legal. We did a lot of collection agencies, that kind of stuff, bankruptcy and things. And so it just kind of always kept me in that aspect. And I always excelled in those fields. So even when I was doing customer service or collections in a field that had nothing to do with justice, I could excel in that. It was just a passion for me. So when I came to Montana in 2002, I wasn't working at the time. My husband was, and I thought, oh, it's going to be my chance to kind of sit back and just kind of watch the kids and see them grow. But then we found a part-time position with the Justice of the Clerk's office down there, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect, part-time position, stuff I love. So for one, I've got a lot of experience just in that aspect. So I've been a clerk for Justice of the Courts, or Justice of the Peace as a clerk. Probably my first stint around was maybe 2002 to 2008-ish, 7, and then he got a job down in Louisiana, and so I opted to follow him and went down there for 3 or 4 years, and then I came back in 2014. Judge James was currently the JP at that point. She asked me to come back as a clerk, and I jumped right on it. And then at that point, she retired. Judge McGone was elected, and so I was able to clerk for Judge McGone for 8 years. And that's when I first became the substitute judge, or a judge pro tem, to fill in for Judge McGone, and first got my feet wet becoming an actual judge. Not just a clerk anymore, but now I've gotten the experience of being a judge. And so for that one aspect, you know, I have the experience, yes, but that I don't think is the full picture of it, because you can have experience in a lot of things, but to me, it's my passion for what I do. I really strongly feel that we need to listen to each individual, that everybody has a side, but I also know that as a judge, I have to be very impartial, and there's times I can't hear those sides. A lot of times people come into me right away and they'll want to tell me their whole story. And they don't have an attorney, they're an individual, they may understand the laws, and so it's hard because they want to tell me their whole story, but I have to get them to understand that it may not be in their best interest to share that whole story with me. The reason for that is because they may tell me something that I shouldn't hear at that point. And so I've had to learn to step back from that as well. So I'm not very active in the community. You don't see me a lot of the community events. I support my grandkids very much in sports, but other than that, you don't see me a lot in the community because it's hard to be fair and unbiased as a judge when you know everybody in your community. So if I'm out doing things and going to events that make those relationships with individuals in the community, then it makes it harder for me to sit as a fair and unbiased judge. And there's times that does happen. You get someone who comes before you, they may be a neighbor, they may be someone that your kids went to school with, they may be someone you go to church with, and how do you find that fair and unbiased balance, when you're working so closely in a small community? And to me, it's very important that you do get that fair and unbiased, because I don't want anyone to lose out on their rights because of a perception somebody may have about the judge and the party. So I have to pull that back and keep it separate. Where some of the other parties, the other candidates may have other relationships in the community, I think part where I have that level of where I'm not maybe as in-depth into the community, and I'm not saying that's bad because we need to be part of the community, but as a judge, you have to hold yourself separate to certain things. You have to avoid the appearance of impropriety. You may not even be doing anything wrong, but if someone perceives that, so you kind of are held to a higher standard. And that's not always an easy thing to do. There's been a lot of events that I've missed out on, things that I would want to participate in, but I feel like it may not look the best if I were to participate in some of those events. So for one of those things, that's one thing I've had to consciously do, is to separate myself from some of what happens in my community, even though I want to be part of that community, because I have to keep myself at that separate level of a lot of things. So for one, I've had the skills to do that. Now that I've been in the JP position now for 4 years, I've already attended, we have 2 trainings that we have to do twice a year. So I've had those trainings. You have to be certified your first year out. I've got all that skill, I've got all that time invested in me. The county's already invested that time and effort and money in me. And I think that continuing to support me in that makes sense, because you're not having to retrain someone else. So just in that aspect, I think it's another thing that I can make a better candidate for, because the county's already invested in me in that aspect. As also as part of, I guess it started when I was a clerk, the state Department of Justice, or the Office of the Court Administrator, does different committees. They try to gather people from different court systems, the bigger courts like the justice courts, the district courts, some of the smaller city courts, some of the bigger ones. And they set up committees where they're pulling expertise and knowledge from different levels of courts and different size of counties and stuff. So they're trying to get everybody in, and they're trying to make things automated. So for the since 2014, I've been part of a automation committee that helps with making sure that the courts are doing things the best we can to be similar. So no matter what court system you're going to in Montana, you're getting fair and you understand, no matter where you're going, whether you're in Missoula or Mineral County being a small court, that you're going to get treated the same, that we're using all the same resources. We've done another committee where we've started creating electronic e-filings now, so people don't have to come in person and file. There was a lot of years of committee work that went into that they asked me to be part of that committee. There's another one that's currently in place they're figuring out how to automate more of the jury management system. So when we have jury trials and things like that, that it's more automated. And so, again, I was selected as part of that, not only as a judge, but as a clerk, and then they maintained my position on part of those committees when I became a judge. So I've got that experience too, that brings not only my experience to Mineral County, but it shares that experience with Montana as a whole, so that we can all utilize the experiences from each court, each county, and pulling those things together. So I'm also a good resource, not only for just Mineral County, but for Montana as a whole as well. And I think that's another strong asset that I have in my favor, because I have connections outside of even just Mineral County that I can rely on when questions do come up, or when there possibly is a conflict of interest. I can reach out to find out what level, what are kind of some recommendations and some things like that. So those are some things that I think would make me the better candidate. I honestly don't know exactly what was said in some of those others. Another portion of it I can talk about that I think it's really important for our county, because we have the way station here. We see a lot of motor carrier types, commercial motor vehicle, things like that come through. I've got a lot of experience in working with that now. We're dealing with how to transition the language barrier that we have. We've brought in services called Language Link, so that when we do have individuals come in who don't speak English as their first language, we're able to provide a service to them from the very moment they walk in, to ensure that they're understanding their rights as well. And then I am looking really strongly at becoming a court of record for Justice Court. So Justice Court is not currently a court of record in Mineral County. We're not recorded, we're not videotaped, it's not where you can't come back and get dispositions or reports from a hearing. Nothing is recorded by video or any of that stuff. It's all written down and recorded properly, but it's not a court of record. So right now, let's say I get a case that gets appealed after a trial and it goes up to the district court, they have to hold a whole new trial. So instead of just taking the record and reviewing the record to determine where everything was done properly, the district court has to now hold a whole new trial, which now means that we're paying the expense of a jury trial for Justice Court, and now potentially another trial, a trial at the district court level. So becoming a court of record will allow us to have those cases still heard up in district court, but they'll not be considered a new trial or a trial de novo. They'll just strictly listen to the record to ensure that any rulings and things like that were made appropriately, and they'll make their decisions solely based on the record. So that's an expense that we'll be saving for the county, and that's something else I'm looking to do to help because we know Mineral County is not a wealthy county. It's just another expense, I think, that we're trying to help alleviate, that we can keep within the county and potentially use for other resources or things that we needed to. But just another thing that we're looking at. So it's my experience in being there that allows me to see where those needs are and to address those needs.
Thank you. What do you need to do in order to become a court of record?
So to become a court of record, a lot of the things COVID has this is the one thing that COVID helped our county out with, at least in Justice Court. When all that was going on, we were able to get some funding, and that allowed us to get our Zoom equipment. So now we have the Zoom, so the video, people have two-way communication, audio, video communication. We just now need to get the approval from the commissioners, and I've talked with them a bit about this already going forward, and then making sure that the equipment that we currently have will accommodate the requirements that we need as a court of record, and in recording those hearings and things, we need to make sure that we have the equipment that will not only record it, but then we have to be able to store that as well, because there's record retentions and all those types of things that we would have to keep the record for. So it's really just logistics now. It's just making sure that what we do have in place, which is the funding that we did luckily get a lot from the COVID money that came from the government, that we were able to get those that equipment for the Zoom. And so now it's just a matter of making sure what we have is going to do the things it needs to do, and then going to the commissioners to get their approval and make sure everybody's on board with that. And then it'll be a name change, and then we can transition to that. And I think in the long run, it will save time, but it also allows people to once again get out there and listen. They may not be able to hear our meetings because they're open to the public. You can get on Zoom and listen in if you chose to. But they're not recorded right now, so you wouldn't be able to listen to any old meetings or be able to pull anyone records. So that's one thing that we're looking to do, is to make those changes. But the big factor for me in that is when something does get appealed, because we do have the right to appeal decisions, that when it does get appealed, that we're making it the most effective and cost-effective, but time efficient as well, when those appeals go up to district court, so they're not having to go through the whole new process.
Is there training for your office as well that comes with this higher level of responsibility in record keeping and records retention? And does Mineral County hold that cost for that space? I know Kellyanne doesn't have much more room in the safe to start adding more, or is it all electronics?
So it would be mostly almost all electronics stored in the cloud. The Justice Court currently is part of the Department of Justice, or the Office of Court Administrator. So our equipment, our computers, and all of that are not necessarily stored with the clerk and recorders. Our stuff is all bought and purchased through the state. And so a lot of our stuff, like our Zoom stuff, is billed through the state. I pay the state for that versus the county. So it wouldn't be stored within the clerk and recorders. It would be stored on at the state level in their cloud.
So it would be a software training
at most, right? And it would be something, I think, that I don't know that the state provides the actual training. It would be done depending on the equipment that we finally get approved to utilize. If what we have now works, that they already know how to work that and have been trained on it. If we determine that there'll need to be some new equipment or an upgrade, then we'll ensure they do get trained. Most of the training that happens in the Justice Court happens through the state. It's not done at the county level, but the state mandates it mandates training for the judges, but it provides training for the clerks as well, and they do have a training twice yearly that they are participating in, and a lot of the things, new things that come about, they break off into different sessions. So now instead of just going and getting trained on being a clerk at Justice Court, they're going to go in and now get trained on how to be a clerk of the Justice Court of Record. So they'll get that separate training that comes with being a court of record, and how they're going to need to make sure that they're following the proper steps for a clerk in court of record. And then the judges will have their separate portion of that will now break off into, and instead of going to just a justice court session, it'll be a justice court of record session, where we'll get additional training that may differ slightly from those that are justice court versus courts of record.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Is this something that you are willing to fight for at the commissioners?
Yeah, it is, and I honestly don't think it'll be much of a fight with the commissioners. I think they're on board with it as well. I think the big thing for us is just making sure, of course, that there's not going to be that extra cost. And even if there is, there's grants, there's things out there that we can look at. But I think the fact that it'll save money for the county in the long run is a big incentive. And I think they would be fully on board with this as long as we made sure that the equipment that we have now meets that criteria that we need. But I don't foresee there being an issue even with the commissioners at this point. But would I be willing to fight for it? I think it's the right thing for the Justice Court, and so yes, I would be willing to fight. But luckily, I think the commissioners are also aware that it's probably the best thing, and I don't think there would be much of a fight.
Have you had the discussion with the Sheriff's Department and our incoming county attorney about this as well?
I have not, regarding them being the court of record. It's not really I mean, it is something for them to be aware of, but they don't get to have an input on whether or not they should be a court of record or a justice court. That's really the commissioners and the justice of the peace at that point. But of course, I would be more than happily welcome a conversation with the parties that would be affected by it. I see another question.
Sure. I'm at the very beginning. What is your geographical and subject matter jurisdiction?
So my geographical, are you asking for the Justice of the Peace?
The office.
Oh, so, okay, so I'm currently on the Justice of the Peace. We handle misdemeanor traffic, civils up to 15,000. I'm strictly within Mineral County, although I am also the judge for Alberton and Town of Superior. Those are appointed positions and have nothing to do with the JP. So the Justice of the Peace is strictly for Mineral County. Misdemeanor, I do handle felony initial appearances, where I don't take pleas on felony cases, but I do advise them of the charges, advise them of their rights. I'll set some conditions, set some bond, things like that. So that's on felony cases. I handle the district court's warrants, but those are for any warrant that is a non-Mineral County warrant. Those are what we consider out of jurisdiction warrants. So I'll do courtesy appearances on those. And then again, back to the civil, it's up to $15,000. I do civil orders of protections and we do small claims. Does that answer your question, or was there something
No,
more?
that's why I wanted to.
Yes, sir. Do you marry people? I have the ability to. At this point, I have married, I've done one wedding and it was for my son. So yes, I'm happy to do it, but Judge James has been my go-to for the weddings. She's been such an amazing wedding. She's done weddings for the whole time since I've been here, and I've had the privilege of witnessing some of those. So she is my go-to. So to be honest with you, I do have the ability. I have done it once, maybe twice, now that I think of it, but it's not something I do a lot of. And again, I don't do so much of the public, the community stuff, as I do the behind the scenes, the work, because it's hard to keep unfair, or to keep fair and unbiased, and keep those relationships. So a lot of that stuff I don't do, but I've had some opportunities, and yes, I do think weddings are important and they're fun, but they're, right now, they're not my main focus. But I do have that ability. Are there any other questions that I can answer?
Why do you think those other two people are running against you?
I honestly don't know. I know that some of the questions that arose in the debates led me to believe that there may be those who think that I may be, at some point, had a hearing where they felt maybe I was not fair or unbiased, or maybe I should have removed or recused myself from a case. I disagree with that. I'm very cautious, and I have recused myself or removed myself from cases before, just for that fact. But the thing that this is for such a small community, and if I was to recuse myself or remove myself from a case because of everyone I knew, I wouldn't be able to do a very good job. And we would be outsourcing most of what we do in our community because we're a small town. And if you come up to someone who comes before me on a traffic ticket and I say, I can't see you because your kid and my kid went to school together, that doesn't serve a purpose in Mineral County. So what I have to look at is, do I have the information that's going to make me fair? Do I have too much detail where I'm going to be biased now? And if I do, then I should pull myself from that case. But if I feel that there's no relationship, and there's certain judicial canons that tell us ethically when we should pull ourselves off of a case, and so there's some guidance out there. But and again, I'm speculating because no one has come out to me and said specifically this is why I'm running. I'm just basing it off some of the questions that I heard. I don't believe I've ever sat on a case that I have not been fair and unbiased on. And I believe maybe one of the other candidates felt that I should have removed myself from a case. Whether that's true or not, again, is speculation. If indeed that is why that other party is running, I want the community members of Mineral County to know that I take my job very seriously and I would never intentionally harm either party, whether it's the state or a defendant, or into civil matters, a petitioner and a defendant or a plaintiff and a respondent, intentionally be biased and try to make a ruling on a case where I had too much detail or I was friends with someone, because that's not fair to either party. And I am, if nothing else, very fair. Justice is very important to me, and so I take that role very seriously to ensure that I am not hearing cases where I can't be fair and biased. Like I said, I even removed myself from cases where I know I could have still ruled fairly, but the perception of the public maybe felt that there was some bias, and I don't want ever there to be someone to see or think that I'm not making decisions based on the law and the facts. It's important to me that everyone know that that's what I make my decisions on. So I can't say for fact what's happening, but based on some of those questions, that's the understanding or the perception that I received, and that would be my response. But I can tell you that's the furthest thing from my mind to do. I won't even look at documents and look at the names on them until I've read the pertinent information before I even look at the parties that I'm dealing with, because I don't want that to affect a decision I make when I'm reading something that I need to make a decision on. So I'll not even have the clerks give me, or I'll cover that information. I'll read what I need to do to gather what the facts are that I need to decide on. Once I've got that, then I'll look at the whole thing so that I have the whole picture. But I don't want a name or someone that I may have seen on Facebook or seen in the store to influence a decision I'm going to make based on a ruling. So I make what I can just on the facts. And that's what I intend on doing going forward as well.
Tell me about some of the appeals.
I don't want to take up time. I mean, there's been things when I first came as part of the, when I first took over for Judge McGone, even in the year that I filled in for him because of some medical things, where the county has had some crazy, the Brady stuff. You guys all probably heard about the Brady stuff, and I didn't have such maybe a role to play in what went on through the whole writ of mandamus and all that stuff, but I did have a case, several cases that I had to make a decision on. It wasn't an easy decision for me because I had to decide whether or not the officers we have in Mineral County at the time had violated the basic role of being a police officer, because they did not have their mental health evaluations done by an appropriate doctor. They had them done by PA, physician's assistant, with the understanding that at least I think they thought they were all good to go. But I had to turn around and say that almost every one of our officers at one point were not ready to be officers because they hadn't followed the proper procedure. So this wasn't an easy thing as a new person coming in as a JP to make. I ruled that we had to suppress a bunch of stuff, and they couldn't bring any of this stuff to trial because the officers were not legal officers at the time. That decision got appealed up to the district court. The district court ruled against me, said, no, you're wrong. They could be like civilian officers, kind of like citizen officers. They still have the right to do all this stuff. Well, then that decision got appealed up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court overturned and again ruled that yes, I was correct, that our officers unfortunately did not have the right criteria, and that a lot of what they had done during this period of time had to be suppressed, and a lot of cases had to go away. That was a hard decision for me because these were big cases. These were not just speeding tickets, you know? But I had to make the right decision based on the law. And not a lot of people were happy with those decisions, but that's the kind of person I am. That's what I take important. And I'm sorry for the tears. It's just that important to me to make sure that I'm looking at the facts and not just making a decision solely based on emotion or who I know. I am an emotional person, I get that. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. Is that always probably the best thing to have in a candidate? You'll have to decide that. But what I will tell you is this emotion comes from the passion that I feel for our justice system and how important it is for the people of Mineral County to have justice for all aspects. And from someone who is not biased, who is fair, and wants to do the best for their county that I can. And I think that's where I excel. That yes, my passion and my love for this community, as evidenced unfortunately by these tears, is real. But I don't let that rule me. I base everything on facts. Sometimes the hardest decision to do is to find someone guilty or not guilty based on facts, when my heart might say something else. But you don't get to listen to your heart as a justice of the peace. You gotta listen to the facts, and you have to be fair and unbiased. And it's not always an easy thing to do. Yes, sir.
The other two candidates, do either of them have clerking experience?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of any actual clerk or justice of the peace experience, but I could be wrong. But I'm not aware of any. It is something that I've had a passion for. Like I said, I was a clerk for many, many years, and so I have that going for me as well, because I know sometimes that side of things. But it's the justice of the peace. That's where my heart is. That's where my passion is, and I want to make sure that the people of Mineral County have a justice of the peace that they can rely on, that will know that they don't have to worry about being biased by someone in the community or something in the community, because it's not important to me. The other aspect I think that is so important is our children. Our children are the futures of this county, and we need to get them more involved. I've done a few little trainings with kids, like they'll bring the kids in from school and we'll sit and do little mock trials and things like that. And I think that's one of the other things that is so important, is making sure that our young people understand how the justice system works, you know, and get them learning that now and through hands-on experience. So that's just something else that's really a passion for me, and making sure our kids understand that is, and can grow up with that information is another huge thing that I want to work towards. I'm open to any other questions or any input. Is there anything that you, as members of our community, think the justice of the peace or the justice court needs to improve or change? Things that we can take and run with, bring back? Because this is the people's court as well, you know? A lot of times, this is our first interaction with any kind of law. We may not always see right to the district court, and a lot of times, the justice court is kind of that first interaction with individuals, and I think it's important that we make sure that everybody understands and has some comfortable with coming in. You know, you're not always 100% comfortable in something that's unfamiliar, but to know that you can come in and rely on people. That if there's anything that you all think that we need to do or can make improvements on, I'm open and open for suggestions as well.
Does the Justice Court have any other, besides collecting fines, are there any community service type programs that the community or that the Sheriff's Department with Justice Court, I don't know what departments would, but it sure seems like sometimes fines are hard to collect in Mineral County, but maybe collecting some time, picking up some
Right.
sides of the road.
Community service is a huge portion of that. So the legislation recently made it a very, well, it's against the law to fine someone or sentence someone without first doing an ability to pay. So we have to make sure that we're not assessing fines that are beyond what someone can afford to pay. We don't want to make something that, you know, give them an order of the court saying you have to do this, knowing that by doing this you're going to take out any food that they might be able to give their child, or you know, whatever. So it is If someone ever comes to me and says, you know, Judge, I understand this is the sentence you just handed down, but I cannot afford that, the first thing I want to do is to make sure they have that ability to pay. So we'll have them provide financials, we'll have them provide, you know, what their income is, what their expenses are, and we try to adjust that to make it reasonable before we even go anywhere beyond into looking at other resources. We want to make sure that the fine is still something that encourages them not to continue to do it, you know, because that's the bottom line, is we want to make sure that we're preventing people from continuing to come in for the same reason. So you have to make it hard enough that they don't want to keep coming back, but you don't want to make something so difficult that they can't complete what you're requiring them to do. So first off, I would look at that ability to pay. And then we do have community service, and we don't require, because we're type of a rural community, we're not going to be Missoula where you have to go to a specific community service provider to do your community service. We're just asking for individuals who may owe fines to the court to find someone in the community who may be elderly or unable to perform a service. Maybe they can't get out and shovel their sidewalks in the wintertime when it gets cold. Maybe they need firewood and they're not able to go out and do that, and they can't afford to pay someone else. The court allows those individuals to seek people in the community. They might be in need of help. It could be picking up trash on the sidewalk or on the highway. My main focus is usually to try to find someone who needs help, a nonprofit, the fire departments, the food banks, things like that. Go do some service. Is there someone in your school that's a teacher or a principal you can talk to and find out because we do have kids. It's not just adults that get in trouble. So we have kids as well that are working for a community service. But that is one of the first things we look at. And I always say to them, I'm going to assess this fine, but if at any point you're not able to do this because it's not my intent to make life harder for you, you still need to get through your life. You still need to have a life, but you still need to be responsible for something that you've done. But we need to be able to work together to make sure you have the tools and resources to do that. So community service is a big one. We do provide that service to people now. We get individuals who will happily take us up on it, and then others that say, no, you know, I've got this. I think I've got enough resources or whatever to make it work. But we definitely do provide a service. It's not necessarily through another department like the sheriff's department or anything like that. It's really just the individual working with the justice court when they have a time of need or when something comes up. We try to provide them resources, but we don't, it's not a structured, because a lot of those times when you get a structured program, you're paying somebody else to run it, and we don't have the funds to do that. But the clerks are really good about helping people, trying to find resources. People in the community will reach out to the justice court. Hey, you know, we've got X, Y, and Z of things that could be done. If you've got individuals looking for some community service, let us know. So there's things like that that we do work towards as well, because we understand, especially in a community that's rural, you're not close to a big service area, that we've got to find the resources that are going to work for the people in our community. So we definitely do provide that service already, and are willing to take additional input from those who are in need of that community service. But yeah, it's definitely something we need to continue to do for our community. Any other questions or?
This is not, I don't know if you have anything to do with it, but like on jury duty, calling people for jury duty, are the standards that are age and everything on like that set by the state or by the county?
So the standards are set by the state. There's certain guidelines that we have to follow. They did recently pass now that if you're, I think, 75 or older, you just have to ask to be excused. You no longer have to have like a doctor's note or be medically, or you don't have to have a reason. It's just you now can hit a certain age. Once you're at that age, all you have to do is let us know that you no longer want to serve or are able to serve, and you can be excused. Without that, there are other criteria that we do have to follow to be like excused, like on a one-off. If it's just for that trial, maybe you're out of town or you have a medical thing going, you just reach out to the court. You can fill out an affidavit or whatever, and the court will excuse you for it. But if you're someone who may need something more long-term, maybe you went in and had surgery and you're going to be incapacitated for 3 months, we can actually put a little note in your file if you let us know that you're unavailable from this time to this time, and you won't even be called during those times. So we do try to facilitate it, but there's a lot of times we just don't know until someone gets that first notice and they're like, well, I'm getting it now, what do I do? And they'll say, well, you can either confirm that you can be there and show up, but if you've got other stuff going on, you'll have to either get a doctor to sign off if you need a permanent excusal. So these are more people that might have a permanent disability or something that'll prevent them from ever being able to really serve jury duty. They get a doctor letter to sign off on, and we'll get them permanently taken out of the system. But there's not anything other than the age that just recently, I think, went into place last year. There's not anything that really excludes everyone automatically from jury service, but the age now is something that can. Everything else, you have to submit an affidavit for the judge to look at. If you've moved out of state, that's just something saying, I moved, you want to reside in the county, that type of thing.
Okay, so are they gonna, because there's been nothing on the thing about the age. I mean, because both my husband and I have been called, and I mean, he's 87, I'm 83, and I'm deaf as well. I wrote that in and I still got called. You'd have to have somebody sitting next to me telling me everything that's said.
Right.
And everything, so, okay, but that 75 or older is good.
Yeah, so that's something new that's in place, and the questionnaires that we send out, these are one of those things that I'm working on right now as part of this automation committee, because they're trying to make it standard no matter where you're in the state, that you answer the same kind of questions, and then they have the ability to add some supplemental questions, like for something really specific. But they're trying to standardize those, and so that no matter where you're at, we're going to be able to get that information, and then you won't have to, we'll know automatically, you know. But some people still want to serve, even though they're 82 years old, so we can't automatically exclude you just based on age, because somebody might want to be serving. Yeah, but we're sure happy to excuse those who don't, so that would be something you and your husband would just need to let us know. We've extended it now to, it used to be just 2 weeks that you would receive a notice before a trial. That's now been extended out to 3 weeks because, again, small communities, sometimes it's hard to get those notices to some of these rural areas. So we've tried to add an additional week to try to make sure that we're getting some of those notices out to people that didn't get them in time.
Okay, thank you.
Court data, elaborate on that a little bit if you wouldn't mind. I can kind of see you're talking about the juries and stuff, and they're talking about how much the workload has increased. And
Well, that's kind of a funny thing to put up. I wouldn't necessarily say it's court data, but you would think Mineral County, as small as we are, we would be one of the less busy courts in the state. We're actually one of the busier courts in the state. I mean, we're not quite comparing to Yellowstone or to Missoula justice courts, you know. But for being number 54 in the county, we're probably in the top 15 busiest courts. So we're pretty busy, as small as we are. A lot of what it is of course, is our interstate, the motor carrier services,
A lot of people going
the
through.
highway patrol. We do get them when they'll do like a combined workforce with the different law enforcement agencies, and that'll pick up a lot of things that we'll see from whether it's drugs and trafficking or human trafficking, things like that we all hope don't happen in our county, but because we're that main interstate, it may not be occurring here, but it's sure going through here. And so it's those things like that they're able to pick up and help with. But the support-wise and volume-wise, yes, we're small, but we're not where you would think we would be, being number 54 county. We're one of the larger courts considering the size of the county we come from. And like I said, no shape when comparing us to Billings or to Great Falls, but some of the ones that are not too far from us, you know, are gonna be ones that you would expect to be a lot busier, kind of not.
our part is it puts a strain on the community because it also asks everybody to be part of the jury. When we stop the court of record, it's actually another jury now if they do an appeal. So everybody here is the jury duty that everybody has to accommodate for. You see what I mean?
And I'm sure you guys
been
have
called.
experienced that a lot, right?
Yeah.
You've been called
Every year,
and
but
it's not in the justice court, call up in the district court, and if it's not them, and if you happen to be in either town of Superior or Alberton, you might get a city one of those too thrown in. You could get ones for the schools thrown in. You know, there's just so many different things that you may see. But yes, we're a tiny county, but we're definitely a busy county. It's definitely lots going on here. We're definitely not slowing down, I'll put it that way. But that's yes, ma'am.
So what's your thoughts on getting a crime victim advocate back in the courthouse? I know that we have the helpline and she does amazing, but I've heard that having one in the building was quite helpful, especially when it came to the actual process in both courts.
Right, and Sue, my dealings with the advocates are a little different because the court has to remain neutral. So we don't get to appoint, we don't get to, we can give resources. But honestly, I don't know that it would make a huge, I mean, we need advocates for sure. I don't know if they have to physically be inside the building at this point. Of course, I think it would be easier access to everyone, but they're doing such an amazing job of getting out there and being available to these individuals, and we're talking from the district court level to justice court level down to the city, you know, and everywhere in between. I don't know that they would be more productive if they were actually in the building or not.
Well, I think what I mean more by that is the funding coming through the courthouse. They're able to get the grants.
The granting and stuff is you're talking about.
Truthfully, I think that a victim advocate that was capable of providing a service closer to the actual scene. Domestic violence obviously is my concern in this county. And if we had someone who was able to work, including with the helpline, but work with the county as well, to make sure that we're getting victim advocates
Right, and I know
contacted.
grants, I think it was done as, it was, because it's never been out of the court system itself. I think it either came out of the county attorney's office, or at one time it may have been part of, because they worked really closely with law enforcement, so I don't know if they.
One of each.
Right, so they might have had some both places. I feel that they're gonna need that again. I think that's the better option, is to get it funded by our county and not rely on the helpline and not rely on, because Missoula's doing a lot for us. Missoula's really helping kind of pick up this and helping us with our advocates right now and helping us get that program up and going when we don't no longer have that grant through the county. So I definitely think the grant through the county, it needs to happen here. I think they need to find a way to get that funding back through the county so that it can be.
Well, it's the DOJ, and they actually funded the whole thing on both the last two.
Right, and I think this last time around, I think it may have been just timing, and I don't think we had the ability to get the grants done in a manner that we needed to get them done, minus some other things that I'm not privy to because I was not part of the grant process. But I definitely think to have the control back under the county and the county to know where those funds are being dispersed and how they're being utilized, and having those advocates readily available is crucial to our county, because a lot of what we do see are domestic things, and whether that's with kids involved or families involved, it's not always just a one-time person thing. A lot of times there's multiple people involved, and we can't just have one advocate, because in one case you might have the need for 2 or 3 or 4 of them, depending on what the circumstances are. And we need that funding. It's not something the county's going to be able to do. We need the resource, and so we definitely need to find a way to bring in that funding and get back to going. My understanding is I think they're still looking at doing that again coming up in this new year, but I don't know the specifics of it.
I have questions, and I have spoke with Roy about it.
Yeah, so I do know it is something that they definitely want to pursue. And
If we're gonna wake a judge, I'm sure we can find an advocate at 3 a.m. too.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of my hope, is that
But
we
no matter
cover
the
all
time
the
of day,
bases.
exactly, and I remember there was a time that they could get an advocate and have them there no matter the time of the day. And so my hope is that they are able to get back to that same process that they had, and to make sure that those individuals who are in need of assistance are getting it in the moments they need it, and not, we're doing the best we can right now with resources, but there's a better, and we'll get to that better, I think, when we can get back and get that funding and get it kind of back under the county. But I definitely think it's something we have to do.
Thanks.
Yes. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, I won't keep y'all. I love your little town. We had to go for a little drive just because I love it up here so much.
Did you make it upstairs
I
yet?
haven't been upstairs
Oh,
yet.
before you go, one of these ladies could definitely
I would
tell
love
you-
to.
tell you the
Just
stories.
peek up there, because I hear that it's all looking like a schoolroom upstairs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have a lot of
Thank you very
flies on
much,
the
Kim.
floor.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.